All right. So we had a sunnier day than usual today. But how's everybody feeling about February? A thumbs up, thumbs down? Like it's halfway over. So yeah, we're getting there. So for a lot of us, and I hear this all over the place, February is a really hard month. I know for me, it's a really hard month. And somebody was calling it the winter doldrums. But the past few years, I've kind of been changing my perspective on January, February. First off, the holidays are over. So sometimes we're all like pooped anyway because of all that craziness. But it's also that everything kind of settles down a little bit. There's not as many social things on the calendar. So it can be just a good time. Like I kind of take it as a time for rest. Our week, God gave us obviously a Sabbath day to rest, but there's also a little bit of a Sabbath in the seasons as well. I mean, it doesn't follow exactly the 7 day work week. But January, I don't really have to get chase cobwebs away off my porch. I don't have to rake leaves. I don't have to mow the lawn. I don't have to weed the garden. I really can just take care of my home and my schoolwork and cuddle up on the couch with a lot of reading. But there is a period, there's a certain amount of rest that there is in that. And then February too, like towards the end of February, I mean, it still is pretty dreary out. Like right now we have snow on the ground, but there's actually quite a lot of things going on in nature that we don't necessarily see. We're all in this really big hurry to rush on towards spring, when the flowers start blooming. And if you go to like Kirkland's or Hobby Lobby, they're really like pushing the spring flower decor on you right now. But all that stuff that happens in April and May, really like all those flowers can't burst into bloom. And even the harvest that comes, in August, September, October, all that can't happen without the preparation work that God plans in nature in late February and in March. The metabolism of the plants, I don't know if they call it that metabolism, the enzyme activity or whatever that's happening in plants at this time is very, very important for what happens later. They're pushing down their roots. You don't see it because it's beneath the surface, but they're pushing down their roots deeper. Some of the seeds are softening up and starting to crack already. The bulbs, snowdrops especially are one of my favorite flowers, but they're starting to do their work right now. And in the same way, in February, we could treat this like the doldrums of February, or we could treat it as a season of rest and preparation for the crazy activity that's going to start happening over summer. And especially if we hit August and we haven't done some of that good preparation work for the new year, we're going to be kind of frantic, when we're looking at challenge 2 and like, oh, I didn't do all that. Like I have to get my mind around this now. So I'm really glad everybody's here on the call now, because it'll make August a lot easier for you. So all right, we're going to start off with introductions. The call earlier today had like 20 people on it, so introductions took a long time. This one's not as bad. So I think we could go ahead and just one by one, I'll just like call on your name. If you could just tell me the number of years homeschooling, number of years in CC, if you're new to CC, where you're calling from, either your home or what community you're in, and then what brings you on the call today. And I'm going to let Amy, you're first on my docket. So if you could go ahead and unmute yourself and I'll introduce yourself a bit.
Hi, I'm Amy. I have been homeschooling for 9 years and doing CC for 8 years. I'm on the call because my oldest is doing Challenge 2 next year.
Okay, awesome. Good to have you. All right, I think Jen, you're next on my list.
Okay, let's see. We've been homeschooling for 11 years and same amount of years in Classical Conversations. We're in the Ashland community, and I'll be directing Challenge 2 next year, directing Challenge 1 this year.
Okay, good. So doing your homework, right? All right, Amber, how about you?
Sorry, I'm not sure how to work this. I'm
Amber.
Right. I'm on my 6th year of homeschooling, but this is only our 2nd year of CC. My oldest, Hunter, will be in Challenge 2 next year. So he did Challenge B, Challenge 1 this year, and we're looking forward to next year. We're at Hikes Point on Tuesdays.
Oh, awesome. I've got a lot of friends that way. So, all right. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan. I have one student in Challenge 1 right now, my oldest son, Daniel. So he'll be going into Challenge 2 next year. That's why I'm on this call.
Okay.
And it does seem like it's always hardest with him for every level because everything's so new.
Mm.
Never feel prepared. But then by the second one and the third one, like, I'm like, okay, I understand what to do.
Mhm, mhm.
So
The first one
I
breaks
like
you in.
feeling, so I think this call will help a little bit with that. And we have done classical conversations since Daniel was 4 years old, and now he's 14. So
Oh,
10
awesome.
years.
Yeah, 10 years. Awesome. Congratulations. All right. Dara.
Hello. Hi, this is Dara and Anna. Anna's in Challenge 1 this year. We've been
Okay.
homeschooling ever since she was little, as I was a public school teacher. And then I said, I'm not doing that anymore. And Anna's the oldest of 7. And so we're going to Challenge 2 next year. And we've been doing CC for about 7 years. And we are in Northern Kentucky at the Petersburg campus.
Oh, awesome.
And then just looking forward to Challenge 2.
Did I meet you at the Experience the Math Map up there? Maybe briefly?
Over this last summer, no, I was not able to come. I was having a baby.
No? Okay. All right. I was thinking I met a Dara up that way.
Oh,
but-
at Math Map at the library. My daughter's
Yes.
whispering to me. Yes, at the
Yes.
library?
Yeah,
Yes,
at the
yes,
library.
ma'am.
Yep. I thought I met you. So
I was
all right.
thinking like over the summer when we had those meetings, thinking, no.
Oh, the practicums. Yeah. Mhm. Yep.
Practicum, yes.
All right.
I was thinking
Yeah.
protocol. I'm like, no, that's not the right word. Not protocol. Practicum.
Well, we have another math map coming up. I think April. Oh, I want to say.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I forget. Valerie knows.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
the 10th or something. So anyway, all right. Well, we'll see you again then. So, all right, Emily.
Hi. Took me a
How are you
minute
doing?
to find the microphone.
No, that's okay.
I've been doing, this will be my 11th year with CC,
Mhm.
and my oldest is going into 2, and I'm currently a Foundations and Essentials Director.
Emily is my Foundations Essentials Director. So
I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good to have you.
I'm blessed to have you.
All right. Let's see. I think do I have 2 Ambers? So I have another Amber, or it just says Amber 2.
Yes, I'm a different Amber.
Oh, okay. All right.
I
Gotcha.
have been homeschooling for 5 years, all 5 years in classical conversations, and I live in Beaver Dam, Kentucky, but my community is in Owensboro.
Okay.
And my oldest will also be going into Challenge 2 next year.
Okay, great. And I think I'm coming out to Owensboro. I think it's in late March or something. I have to remember because you have. Who's your LR? Is it Joyce? No, I mean Joanne.
Joanne Ballard,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, she's wonderful. I stayed at her house for a bit. So, all right, and then last we have Rebecca.
This is Becca Duke. I typically go by Becca, but
Okay.
I am, let's see, 10 years homeschooling and in CC. I'm at Hikes Point Tuesday. And yeah, just really looking forward to Challenge 2 and hoping to glean some good info about it. My oldest is going in, so all new information for us.
Okay, awesome. Well, we've got a lot of veterans here. And just heads up, everybody, I'm not super techie either. We're all just kind of homeschool moms trying to figure things out together. I don't work for Microsoft and I don't know all these things. So if it takes you a while to find your mic, or if you don't know how to raise your hand or something like that, there's a lot of grace here because heaven knows I need it myself. So we're all just figuring stuff out together. So I am Krista Bottomley. I'm the Kentucky book rep. I cover both halves of the state. I was a book rep out in Pennsylvania and had that whole state, but then took a break for a few years and then stepped back into book repping more recently. But it is a whole different world now. It used to be a very physical job with lots of heavy books and driving a cargo truck. And now it's a lot of technology and social media and stuff like that. So it's a little different, but always learning. So I like to count homeschooling from birth. So my daughter here, she is 22. So if I want to cheat, I can say I've been homeschooling for 22 years, but I suppose technically, what would that be? Is it 17, I guess, when if you count from kindergarten. And then my littlest, my youngest, is Frederick there that she's leaning on. He is 7 years old. And then I have two boys in between. One's in Challenge A right now, and one's a third year essentials. So I kind of span, you know, a bit of the ages. So I'm still in the thick of things, teaching phonics and stuff like that. But I'm also helping my daughter. Actually, I just got off the phone with her, you know, giving her, you know, talking to her about coursework that she's doing in a classical college out in Annapolis, where she is. So, we have been doing CC since Sebastian was in a car seat. I was my first class tutoring. Sebastian was in a car seat. So I guess it's been 13 years. So, and Stacy, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Stacy, and I am currently the Challenge 2 director at LaGrange. And I've homeschooled all along. We graduated my oldest last year, and we've been with CC since 2017. So I did Foundations and Essentials tutoring, and then I directed Challenge A, and then now I'm directing Challenge 2 this year. So, and then my youngest one is actually in my Challenge 2 class with me this year.
Awesome. Okay, so our meeting agenda, and I'll try to stay on time. We're running a little behind so far with like tech issues, but I'll try to stay on time. So let's see, greeting and introductions. I'm going to ask for a volunteer to pray in a little bit, but we're going to do about a 5-minute refresher on the classical model. It seems like we're all veterans on this call, but it's still good for us to kind of get a refresher of it, hear how somebody else phrases it. It's also good for me to practice saying it because people come up and ask me all the time, what is classical anyway? And so then Stacy's going to discuss the director's perspective, and then I'll hit the book rep perspective. Usually doesn't take me 15 whole minutes because Stacy does a pretty good job, you know, covering everything. And then we'll have your guys' perspective with some Q&A time, and then we'll just kind of wrap it up. And if you stay till the end, I can give you a coupon code and tell you some tricks about saving when you have to buy all your materials and stuff. So, all right. Does anybody want to volunteer to pray for us as we get started? Or I can call on names.
Krista, I can.
All right. Thank you, Becca.
Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for the privilege it is to homeschool our children and what a gift that is. Just ask you to bless our time, give us wisdom as we learn how to serve our soon-to-be Challenge 2 students. Please bless Krista and all that she does. And this is a crazy time for her where she's pulled in a million directions. I ask you to just multiply her time and bless her for all that she's doing for all of our communities. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Emily. Sorry, my screen reshuffles, and so it popped up Becca's screen in front of me all of a sudden for some reason. But thank you, Emily. All right. So like I said, we're going to go through the classical model. Let's see. Is anybody not seeing the slides? Let's see. And if at any point you need to get my attention, you can hit the raise hand thing that should be at the top of your screen. But if anybody is not seeing this slides, it's not super important. And a lot of this is covered in Classical Education Made Approachable, and then also through various parts of the catalog. So most of these images shouldn't be anything as a refresher. Most of the slides we're going to have are mostly to prompt Stacy and I to kind of stay on track as we're going through. So you're not missing out terribly if you don't see the slides. All right, so first we're going to, in order to talk about classical education, we need to first talk about what modern education is, because most people, that's what we're most familiar with. So modern education says that man is the measure of all things, which is the essence of humanism. And so they place the student at the center of his own world, as if each student is his own little demigod, with each isolated subject kind of orbiting around the student. Subjects are disconnected islands with information to be studied with no relation to one another, and they're mostly there for the student to harness for his own purposes, usually vocationally, just to get a job. And then you have a poor Christian education, and basically what they do as they just tack on Bible studies into all that. But the student is still at the center of his own universe, and all these subjects are harnessed for his own purposes, but they are still isolated islands from each other. Now, when you get to a good Christian education, they rightfully put God at the center of everything, because they understand that since God created everything, that he is essentially put his stamp on everything. Everything originates in the mind of God. And then a great Christian education it goes a little step further and says, because he created everything, everything reflects him. And since they all originate in the mind of God, so they must reflect him and show us something about his nature. So the Bible tells us that since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. Now, what makes classical Christian education just a little bit different is that it acknowledges that God created a universe, not a multiverse, and each subject has a pull or influence on all the rest, just as objects orbiting a greater object also have an influence and a pull on one another. You can't truly study anything without branching out into other fields, and each one of these things tell us something about our Creator. All right, so then we get into the catechesis wheel, which is, well, most of us are pretty familiar with this at this point in the catalog. Now, this actually only came around, I don't know, it wasn't that long ago. I want to say it was like 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe I just didn't notice it at the time. But when this first came out, I was very familiar with seeing all these, all the subjects kind of orbiting around God, because I'd seen that in the catalog before. And I'd seen like the grammar, the dialectic, and the rhetoric kind of going around. But this thing at the top, doxology, this was new to me. And when I looked it up, or maybe I heard a talk, I don't remember what it was, they defined that as echoing and celebration. So there is like Lee Borton's wrote a book, Echoing on Celebration. I pulled that out and I read it a little bit, but there was something that kind of struck me, or something that came to mind a few years back when my daughter was taking piano, and she was also simultaneously taking musical theory. I think that is in challenge. It's in challenge too, right? I'm not losing it. I keep jumping around subjects or strands so much that sometimes
theory is challenge 3.
Oh, challenge 3. That's right. I just flipped to it. Yep, there it is. We do, well, there is the classical, yeah, then we do the classical music for dummies in challenge 2. Sorry, little tangent. But so when my daughter was studying these things, she called me over at one point and she said, "Mom, come check this out." And she flipped up the back of the piano, and then she said, "Look in, watch what happens when I do this." And she hit the C note really, really hard. And when she did, of course, that string, the hammer hit the string and the string vibrated visibly. But also in there, every other C string in the piano simultaneously started vibrating, even though she hadn't struck it with a hammer, or with the key. And so she hit the damper and she said, "Watch again." And then she hit the D note and it did the same thing with all the D notes. So she was showing me that there was resonance. It's what's called resonance throughout the piano. And then she brought over a violin, and totally different instrument, not connected to the piano at all, and did a C note. And inside the piano, even though the note came from the violin, inside the piano, the strings, the corresponding strings all started to vibrate in the piano. Now, what this makes me think of, the reason why I'm talking about this is this echoing and celebration makes me think of this resonance. And I feel like when we are appropriately studying any subject, whether it's logic or it's science or it's language, any of these things, there is sometimes we kind of come across something that sort of tells us some true thing about God. And there is something in there, some truth in it that sort of resonates with us. And it's going back to some truth about God. And I feel like we can feel that. I don't know if it's just that believers feel that, or maybe non-believers do too. So I don't know if it's related to the Holy Spirit. I don't want to get into the theology of all that, but there's just something beautiful that occurs when we can see God in our studies. And that is what classical education is really wanting to draw out, especially classical Christian education. So I'm going to hit the class. So that is one image or one take on classical education. But I also want to talk about the classical method for learning. So my boys they're in a scouting program called Trail Life. And right now they're learning their knots. So any subject that you want to learn, you have to to do it effectively and efficiently, you follow a natural process for learning anything. You start at the bottom and acquire a lot of just basic knowledge, a lot of basic terms and definitions. So for my sons learning knots, they have to learn the names of knots, how to tie the knots, when to use the knots, and they kind of drill this information, and their scouting instructor comes over and they have to see how fast they can whip the knot together, and he'll show them a knot and they have to be able to identify it. As they go along in it, the scouting master has them do some different things. So he'll say, okay, I want you to use this knot to tie your shoes. And they kind of, and now I want you to do it for setting up a tent, or I want you to do it for pulling a log. And what they find out as they're wrestling through the information that they're learning is that a granny knot's pretty terrible for tying your shoestrings. But if they tie a square knot, it'll stay tied without having to do it the double knot that a lot of us think of with the 2 rabbit ears. But if they use a square knot when they want to drag a log along the ground, it'll shear the square knot straight off, and they needed to use, I think it's called a bowline hitch. I forget. I get mixed up because I'm not learning this along with them. And so they're wrestling through what knots to use, and they're learning how to apply their understanding. And then when they get to the top here, they're starting to bear fruit in wisdom. And when they get to that stage, they're starting to, they're not here yet, but they're going to be sent out into the woods and with some rope, and they're going to be told, see what you can find and see if you can build a fort with it. And they have to figure out, okay, this is the knot I'm going to use for this, and this is the knot I'm going to use for that. And they also they bring other students out to teach them how to use it. So they're taking the knowledge and the understanding that they have learned to bear fruit and applying it in some way and sharing it with others. And that's called the rhetoric stage. And in the same way that we learn any one individual subject, it also correlates with a child's natural developmental stages. So my little Frederick, who's 7 years old, he's in what's called the pole parrot stage. And he is basically just soaking up grammar. So when he's at Trail Life, they're there tonight. When he's there, he's just learning the names of knots. They're just focusing in on the names of knots, but they're not going to go into all that other stuff just yet. And at this age, kids are just primed for learning new things, for learning names and what is this thing and what is that thing. And they could learn the names of all the SpongeBob characters or all of, I don't know, Paw Patrol, or they could learn their timeline song, or they could learn their math facts instead. So they're going to learn something, and we might as well use this, this stage to learn something valuable. Now you get to the next stage. My middle 2 boys are definitely in this pert stage, where they're going to start arguing and like questioning. Okay, so we just learned this timeline song about South America. Why were they having all these revolutions all at once? Why is this happening? And we say, okay, well, what was happening in France at that time? Oh, they're having their revolution. And what's happening in America? They're having their revolution. It looks like some of the people, and it just so happens some of the people who were involved in the South American Revolution had traveled to some of these places. So it looks like there's a correlation to what's going on in history in other parts of the world. So they're kind of wrestling through the facts that they've learned and learning to ask questions about it. Then you finally get to the poetic stage, or the young adult stage, the rhetorical stage. And they've spent a lot of time learning information and arguing with their parents about things, learning what they're supposed to think. But they really have gotten to the stage where they want to say what they think about these ideas, and they want to express themselves, and they want to talk about their own ideas. And we could fight them on this, or we could direct them to use this stage to express something worth hearing. Because you hear about all these college campuses, kids go off to college and all of a sudden they're having protests and doing all this, expressive stuff, but it's not necessarily directed in a very, useful purpose. And so in the later challenge years, we try to direct them and help them express themselves appropriately. And that leads us to, back to the catechesis wheel. So when we're going through our grammar and dialectic and rhetoric stages, that correlates to the first, we have 3 years in foundation, then 3 years we add on essentials, and then the early stages of challenge. We're still very much in the dialectic stage, but as we get into challenge 2, challenge 3, and challenge 4, we're getting more into the rhetorical stage. So, and which corresponds to her challenge scope and sequence. So with that, Stacy, you can go ahead and take over. I'm going to let the dog out really quick. You can let us know your perspective on things.
All right, sounds good. So the theme of challenge 2 is freedom provides opportunity for noble choices. And you guys are all veterans, and so I'm sure you've seen so far how all the themes of the different years really do work through the expression of the work that we're given and in their assignments and how the conversations go in class. That theme really does come through in Challenge 2 also. In Challenge 2, there is definitely a slowdown, particularly by the time you get to second semester. It feels it feels slower than Challenge 1 in terms of the course load. I think CC, I'm assuming that they know students are starting to drive, they're getting jobs, they're taking college credit. And so that can be a relief that there is definitely a slowdown. With that said, there is a lot of work, but it's a lot of things that the students are already accustomed to. And so they can start churning it out a lot faster without feeling the burden, I guess. And so the logic strand is Algebra 2. And so we are working through Saxon, of course, in community. But parents have the freedom to choose whatever math curriculum works for you. I'm accustomed to classes that, you know, are in a variety of algebra levels and a variety of algebra curriculum. We in my home, when we're at home, we use Shorman, and I love Shorman because it works well with Saxon as well, but it's web-based videos, tutorials, and then they've got the web-based grading that I like. It just makes things easier for me, but it keeps in the same feel of Saxon, the same approach as Saxon. So that's just an idea. But of course, in class, we're just having those 5 common topic discussions on algebra. And it's not a problem if, you know, a student is in Algebra 1 or if a student is in advanced math or just doing geometry. You know, it doesn't matter because we're still just having those 5 common topic discussions that are algebra based. Okay, so then in grammar, we are working this year. You guys move on to the Henley 2, Henley second year Green Book, which is yay big. This one is organized differently than any of the other Henley books. Your exercises are really only towards like this part, this end of the book right here are your exercises and lessons. And then in the beginning, you have, and even the exercises too, still work on some more historic information. In the beginning, there's some historic reading to do that just give you some build up, I guess, to the Roman Empire. And then this is my favorite part about Latin this year is that when you get to part 2, so in the second semester, this section right here is the writings of Julius Caesar. And it's writings about his conquests. And so you're translating Julius Caesar's own words. And there's some interesting discussions that come up as you realize, like, this is really only his perspective that we're reading about here, and his perspective on what led up to the war and all that kind of stuff. And so I love that. I think it's fun to me to be able to get to translate his own words. And there's it's helpful to have a map. I have, as a director, I just have one for my students in class so that we can reference, because there is a bit of geography as he writes about the different villages that they go to and rivers they cross and mountain passes, and it's in between this mountain and the other mountain, and we went through the pass and all that kind of stuff. And so it's helpful to have a map of the appropriate time period with the labeling of the like different tribes that were named what they were named back then. They've changed names since then, of course, like Gaul, right? So that's fun. And then, of course, you reference the Blue Grammar Book quite a bit still. And I also do use the catalog puts is castles. That it's a good dictionary to have from here on out, really, in case there's such a broad amount of vocabulary. The vocabulary comes at you pretty fast, and so and some of it is from the previous book, and then you're not sure which, where to find it, and so sometimes it's not in that one, and so it's nice to have a different dictionary. Also for Latin, I like to use, as a director, I don't know if I would use it just parenting my student through, unless my student was really passionate about Latin and really wanted, or even just about language in general. But as a director, I like to use Dwayne Thomas as a resource, DwayneThomas.com. He spells his name D-W-A-N-E. And I absolutely adore him. It's a different subscription service that, but he has a cap. Like if you pay into his subscription for I think it's up to 3 years, then from then on you have a lifetime service. And when you pay into his website, you also get all of his other languages. And then he also has Latin with other multiple other curriculums. And I love Dwayne Thomas because he works through the grammar of every single line, every single sentence. And he works through just like we would in class. And he's identifying the endings, and he's identifying the direct objects and the ablative, and where's the object of the preposition. And he's doing all of that stuff. And so if I ever get stuck, and even though I have an answer key, but I'm like, but why? I need to know why. If I get confused, I go to Dwayne Thomas. And he also has traveled immensely, and he has just a wealth of knowledge, and he gives some really interesting historical facts as he goes through, based on the travels that he's done, and the fact that he's fluent in I don't even know how many languages, but they've also got on his website Spanish and German and Italian, and he's got multiple languages on there, so he's fun. So that's just a resource. And then this year for research, we're doing biology. So Apologia Biology, which is set up pretty similar to the Apologia Sciences that we've been working through in the years leading up. My student has found, so he likes to use the Apologia student notebook. That looks like this. It's pretty thick notebook. We like this because it's got the on your own and the study guide questions in here. And so he likes to have it already pre-organized for him. And then the other fun thing is back here in the back, it's also got the different labs on the experiments that are already back, or it's the lab journal is built in to the student notebook. If your student just uses their own notebook for the on your own and the study guide questions, then you don't get the notebook, then you'll just need a separate notebook for a lab journal for in class when they're doing the experiments, to take notes and make drawings and all of that stuff, so that then they can go home and write up their lab reports. They do have 4 formal lab reports per semester in Challenge 2. And so we do use the student lab report handbook quite a bit. This teaches you, in the beginning, it's got a whole lot of, well, really throughout, it's got a whole lot of explanation for how science-based writing is different than, the writing that we do in our exposition essays. For example, the lab report type style is different. And it also has a lot of help with diagrams, graphs, charts, how to make them, how to label properly. And it goes through every bit and piece of what a lab report should include, and section by section, what should be included in each of those. So this is definitely a must for research. All right, and then in the reasoning strand, So we'll have this little bitty guy, the Strunk and White Elements of Style. And this is really just kind of leisurely read through in class. And then it can be used as a resource for at home. This is really another, it's another writing source that tells you some grammar tips. And so it's really just another, like a writing source, which is nice and it's fun. And then they also work in first semester through traditional logic 2. And look at this guy. Aren't you happy to see this? Look at this little bitty logic 2 book. It's great. And so it's set up very similar to logic 1 in that you're working through different, types of syllogisms, and you're identifying them and then learning how to produce the different syllogisms. But what's fun is then my favorite part about this, in actually my students in class really appreciated this too, is towards the end of it, they also tack on these case studies at the end of the chapters. And the case studies are sort of real world examples. And so they could be an excerpt from a philosopher or a theologian, and the students get to analyze it and find the syllogism and really deconstruct what is the argument that's being made here. And then in class, they have discussions over that to see whether they agree. So sometimes it's, the problem of evil. They're reading Plato or Descartes, C.S. Lewis, Thomas Aquinas, like just little sections in the case studies of real world practice of, okay, now that we've learned all this logic, how do we identify it when someone proposes some sort of philosophy? How do I identify it and then analyze it? So those are a lot of fun. And then second semester in reasoning, we work through this Words Aptly Spoken Socratic Dialogues. And so this is, again, a little bitty tiny book, and it just has 2 dialogues in here, Crito and Meno. But of course, at the beginning, there's like quite a bit of background, and there's some maps and things like that that are given on Plato. And then we read through the dialogues in class and have discussions on, whether we agree or not. And the questions that are asked in here are, in the first dialogue, the theme of it, the question is, what is good citizenship? And then the second one is, what is virtue? And the students really get to explore that and dissect it and have some pretty awesome conversations based on this book. All right, and then in exposition, this year is British literature, and they get to read a lot of really fun books. So British literature, this is ancient, and that's just the wrong slide, but it's British literature. And they start out at the beginning of the year in like Old English, working their way to like Middle English. So they're going through Beowulf and the Canterbury Tales. And so the reading at the beginning of the year in exposition is pretty tough. Old English is tough to read if you're not used to it, and Paradise Lost is pretty tough. But then they quickly go into more and more modern times. And so then they're reading, The Pilgrim's Progress and Robinson Crusoe, Jane Eyre, A Tale of Two Cities. And so it comes more and more modern as the year progresses. Now, CC put out this, the Copper Lodge series, English Epic Poetry. And I really, really recommend this. I'm somebody who typically with the exposition books, I'll go to like half price books and just get all my novels there, particularly with a few of these, Beowulf, Canterbury Tales, like the first few. Beowulf isn't in here. It's Canterbury Tales, The Green Knight, and Paradise Lost that are in here. But there's only excerpts. CC's only asking that, they're not asking them to read the entirety of all the Canterbury Tales. They just have a couple of the stories that they want them to read. And if you get a book of the Canterbury Tales in particular, it's going to be expansive, and it might confuse your student not knowing which particular stories we're supposed to focus on, but also some of the other stories can be lewd. And so to just stay in bounds and make sure that we're nice and safe and our students aren't given access to something that maybe we would regret them having, I really recommend this. It just keeps them in bound. It's nice and easy. And then also in the beginning, so along with exposition this year, they're also going through literary terms and different literary devices that they're learning. And so quite a bit of them are listed in the beginning of this book, and particularly the ones that they're studying with the excerpts of books that are in here. Those are all in the beginning of the book, and they give examples so that the students not only get a definition of the terms and the devices, but they also get examples of where they're found, what they look like in the actual writing. So I love this book. And then the footnotes are incredibly helpful. Again, some of the language is not what we're accustomed to. And so it's just very, very helpful. I really like this book a lot. Let's see. And then first semester, you'll want to ask your director. There's an option of whether they do Gulliver's Travels or A Modest Proposal. And so you'll just want to consult with your director and see what they choose, that students don't have to do both of those things. A Modest Proposal is just an article. It's like a couple of pages. It's a free download. And it's led to some really, really great conversations for how short it is. It definitely is not lacking in substance. It's really a great article. And so, but you'll just want to make sure to consult before, buying one or whatever. That
Can you go into what that article is about? I just thought that was interesting to hear why you thought that was relevant. And
so the historical context on it is, so Swift wrote it as a commentary of the Irish famine and how the elites were overlooking the poor at the time and really just dehumanizing them. And so in class, when we read through it, we were able to really make a lot of modern parallels to who are dehumanized nowadays. And then the first parallel that comes up, to propose the solution to this problem that we have so many poor, and the poor people are hungry and they're starving, and the elites, they just don't know what to do with all these poor people that are such a burden. And what we should really do is take their babies, and we could just eat them, make it a new cuisine, and then they would be fed, and then they would have less poor. And he goes through this, and he actually gives like recipes. It's quite shocking. But the students at this time are studying satire, right? And so it's clearly satirical, and it is shocking. And that's what the whole discussion in class is about. But modern day, of course, talking about abortion and other groups of, who do we dehumanize? And it just becomes a really, really important conversation. And especially as we talk about the theme in Challenge 2 of choices. So yeah, it was really powerful. So they loved it. So they do have 14 essays in exposition in Challenge 2. So it's quite a bit. And 2 of those 14 are creative pieces. They're not all just based on just purely on the novels that they read, but 2 of them are creative pieces, which the students have had a lot of fun. It just they're like just come at the right time, that they just need to shake it up a little bit, and it's fun. You will want to have your students make sure that before I always tell my guys, like, before you even start reading the novel, make sure you get in your guide and you find out what the prompt is. So if you have a student that wants to do early reading in the summer, something like that. Make sure that they know what the writing prompt is going to be, because it will really impact how you mark up your book when you're reading it, if you have that essay prompt in mind. So that makes me think of exposition in Challenge 2. This is, I'm pretty sure it's the first full year that we really completely break loose from LTW. It's a complete break, you know. So as at the end of Challenge 1, they went to comparison essay writing, and really in exposition in Challenge 2, there's no actual writing, you know, curriculum that we're giving you. The students are really expected that now you've got this LTW and the IEW, all of that stuff is ingrained, and you've got it in you, and you know how to use it. You've used it for years. Now they're really just told to go free and to write as they would. And so they're given a lot of freedom in how to formulate, how to structure their essays, but they are given these essay prompts, and it's very important that they read the prompt before they start reading the book, so that they know what they're looking for. So they've got all their evidence marked, and they know what quotes would be just perfect for what they're going for. All right, so that's a lot of fun. All right, and then debate. So again, this year debate is multi-pronged. So it is overall Western cultural history. As that is expressed, there's also 11 essays in debate. So Challenge 2 has quite a bit of writing. So there's 11 essays. They're studying artists and composers. And so they do have the majority of the sources are really research resources that they have for debate. So there's The Gift of Music, State of the Arts, Classical Music for Dummies, and Marvelous to Behold. These are what the students are going to go through, and this is where they get the content for their essays. Marvelous to Behold is where they've got their, it's a beautiful book that has the actual pieces that they're studying in here, but then it also gives a lot of vocabulary for just how do we analyze art, and it gives different concepts of things that we can talk about as we write our essays. And then as these other books, they give a lot of like historical context. They talk about the time periods and how they overlap, and how one time period flows into the next time period, and why, philosophically or based on, you know, science, invention, and all of that stuff. And then they're also another great resource that they're working through is the Francis Schaeffer, How Should We Then Live? And so these are super fun because they get to watch these videos in class together. Not every week, but the weeks that we do have the Francis Schaeffer videos are, at least in my class, like they're everybody's favorite. At first, they're just like, what is happening? This guy is so cringe. But then he becomes just like deliciously cringe because he's so funny. And he's wearing his loafers and his stockings and his knickers, and the students just don't know what to make of it. But he is so fun, and he's incredibly intelligent, and he connects the dots like through the ages so beautifully, and speaks very abstract and philosophical about the whole expression of art. And so he's really great. And I do still reference like our timeline cards. What are these things called? The
X and facts. Yeah.
X and facts cards. We reference those too. So, because like I said, they're writing essays based on the pieces. Okay. So, and then, we also will make a timeline. So there's some beautiful ones that you can buy, you know, like free downloads on or not free downloads, but purchased downloads on like Etsy. That other CC moms that have come before you have made the beautiful timeline cards that you can purchase or the stickers that you can print out or whatever. I just made this guy, which is just cardstock that I taped together. And this is my timeline that I use. And so, and I write everything from, you know, when we've got a new artist that we're studying, a composer, I write scientific inventions, I write the philosophy of the day, what era we're in, who are the writers of the time, the books that we're reading, I put them in here. I put everything in here just because it helps to see how it all flows together, and you help to understand people's motivations or why they're expressing something the way that they're expressing when you can see where it is in a period of time. Political, you know, big political movements, wars, that kind of stuff. I put all of that in my timeline. So that's my timeline. And they probably have one that they've been working on. They could just add to it. Okay, and then they also in debate, like I said, it's the multi-pronged deal. So they do team policy debate, and then second semester they're going to learn a new format of debate, which is Lincoln Douglas. So they have in first semester, in terms of rhetorical assignments, so they have one team policy debate that's only like 7 or maybe 8 weeks into the first semester. So it's a pretty quick turnaround compared to what they're used to. And then at the end of first semester, they also have, so around Thanksgiving, they'll go to a class art museum field trip. And then at the end of the semester, they'll have an art grant proposal where they write a grant. They make like an application for an art grant, and then they deliver to the class as if they were giving a proposal to you know, a body that would be a committee or somebody that would be judging their art grants. And then second semester, they have another team policy debate. This one is only 5 weeks in, so they're just quickening that pace. And then 5 weeks later, they have Lincoln Douglas. So they've got to learn a whole new format and get it ready and be ready to have that churned out in only 5 weeks. And then at the end of the semester, they also have an impromptu speech. So those are the rhetorical assignments. We use the tour guide to debate quite a bit because, again, it's for team policy, but then also for learning Lincoln Douglas, it's very important. And I use my trivium table. We use that a lot. I love this guide because it just has a lot of strategic, you know, like what each speech should be, you know, what should be my focus for each speech. Whether it's like they've got team policy on this side, and you can go through, it's got like a timeline basically of the different speeches. And then on this side, you've got Lincoln Douglas, and you've got a timeline of how the different speeches go. And then you've got basically an outline down here of what the speeches should be focusing on. And you've got a glossary of terms. It's a very useful product. And then Krista mentioned this guy to me in our last Frenzy call, the Saving Leonardo. And I had forgotten, I had picked this guy up, and then we got busy in the semester, and I forgot how beautiful this book is and how useful this book is. And so I picked it back up, and I was like, oh yeah, let me get going on this guy again. This book is a great resource also, Saving Leonardo. It's mentioned in the parent resources in the catalog, but it really does have a lot of content that the students could use also, because there's these like high flyover, again, how the eras of the styles of art were an expression of the philosophy of the day, and they talk about that quite a bit in here and give a lot of language of art critique in that book as well. So I like that guy too. Okay. All right, and then CC Plus. So in Challenge 2, the offerings for CC Plus are Composition 1, College Algebra, Latin 1, Western Cultural History, and Biology. So all of those are offered as CC Plus courses that you can go on your CC Connected and look at how to sign up for those if you would like. I have several students in my class that are taking the dual credit, and it's nice because they can just do, they're taking their coursework that they're already working on for CC anyway, and just expand it and submit it to the CC Plus portal. And now, bada bing, bada boom, you've got some college credit for it. So, yeah, so they've really liked that. All right. What did I miss?
Wow, I think you did my job for me. That was excellent. I love when you get going because you can see your love for the subject matter. And this is such a fun level.
Really fun.
Let's see, or I could do this really quick. I'm going to type in the chat. So Jen asks, put a list of the CC Plus available for Challenge 2. So you said Composition 1, right? It was Composition 1, biology, right? College algebra, and was it Latin 1? Is that the list? Is that right? Were those all the CC Plus ones? Composition 1, which they used to call that, I think, English Comp. Yeah, English Composition 1, biology, college algebra, and Latin. I think that's all of them.
I muted myself again. Western Cultural History is the other one.
Oh, I didn't get that one. Oh, I wrote that off to the side here. I take so many notes when I can get these directors going in these calls. I love taking notes in my catalog and make notes of, because like when I get to this level, oh, don't forget this, don't forget this. Second semester is going to be hard, or second semester is going to be easy. So was it 5? You can get 5 credits? That's a lot. I think with my daughter, we had to it was just a financial thing. I think we kept it at 2, but it was very helpful. So let's see. And if you guys, we can do the Q&A now. So if you guys want to mute yourselves. Oh, did you want to hit protocol really quick and then we can hit the questions?
Oh yeah. So, and then, yeah, their capstone event for the year is protocol. And so, of course, that's a student fave all around. And so this year, my class, we're going down to Bardstown. There's a train, a dinner train, and they're doing a murder mystery. So we're going to go have a fancy dinner on a train and do the murder mystery deal. So.
Yeah, pretty cool. That's unique. I got to look that one up. My husband would just love that for a date, like Murder on the Orient Express.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Is that what it's called? Is it called that? Or is it just like a takeoff?
Right.
Is the guy named Poirot? Is this his name? Is it Hercule Poirot? Is that how you say it? Yeah, he's a big fan of his. So, yeah. So does anybody have, so it's the Amber's asking, is there a map that you can recommend to accompany Latin?
Yeah, I'm looking through my, I have it printed already. So I'm trying to look through my files real quick to see where my map is, if I can plug that in here for you real quick. But basically you just want one that is of the time period. If you get into Dwayne Thomas, he's got one. I'm trying to find where I put it. He's got one in his files. Let's see.
What was a note I forgot to make? Is get a map. Oh no, I did write that. Have a map. And there's some good, I was lucky, my husband has some old, I feel like the libraries are getting rid of all their good books and it's all becoming just silliness with a lot of eye candy and very low content. But he had grabbed a couple, they were history atlases, and they have some really good stuff around the Roman times where you can flip through and say during the Republic, this is there's a few different timestamps there for the Republic, and then with the Roman Empire, it gave a couple other different maps of that. But getting a good historical atlas, I think, is just good for all the challenge years, because you go through an awful lot of this. And back to what you were talking about, translating Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars. So my daughter, because of Challenge 2, she fell in love with Francis Schaeffer, and she went to his L'Abri facility, or it's like a hostel in Switzerland overlooking that big valley there. And she realized while she was sitting there, and like she was reading a map of the area for some reason, and she realized there's a huge portion of Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars that talks about that very valley that she was sitting there overlooking. And she went and found there was now a church that had been built over top of one of these buildings that he referenced and things like that. And it just really, it was just a beautiful thing for her. Like, this is real. It's like walking to her. She said it was like walking into the Lord of the Rings and realizing, oh my goodness, it's all true. Because there's one thing you study about it, you read about it, but then you actually get over there and see it for real. And she got to stay in Francis Schaeffer's L'Abri. Does anybody else have any questions? We did cover a lot of stuff. The debate tour guide is not listed in challenge 2, but you probably already have it for challenge 1.
Here's a fun fact too, as we're reading through Julius Caesar. So Julius Caesar's writings were found, there were 12 manuscripts found of his writings, and they were found 900 years after his life. And so it's fun to think about that and how widely accepted, these are the writings of Julius Caesar. When you think of the New Testament, there's 25,000 manuscripts, and they were found like 50 years after the fact. And so, it's just a fun comparison, to talk about that too in class, of how widely accepted this is taken by academia.
Or Shakespeare. There was somebody put out a document. I was in apologetics class, and they compared some Old Testament writings and some early copies of the New Testament with modern translations, and then they figured out the percentage of accuracy. And then they did the same thing with Julius Caesar and Shakespeare and a couple other things that were fairly recent, like Mark Twain or something like that was, you think of as not being that long ago. And they found that Julius Caesar was something it's only 75% accurate or something. And then Shakespeare was in the 80s or something. But the Bible, which is much older, was something like 99.8 or something % consistent with the oldest records we have with what our modern translations are. And then people want to challenge what the Bible actually says, So anyway, that is a sidebar. So, all right, well, I'm going to cover some of the catalog here really quick. And since Stacy, you covered it so well, I won't have much to do. So, and then we can hit any other last remaining questions that might pop up.
Oh,
so I'm
let
going
me
to stop.
mention too.
Yep.
Sorry. Another cool thing about Challenge 2 is going into second semester, the students also get to start taking the lead on some of the strands. And so the students get to start leading the discussions.
Okay, yeah.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's a big highlight in 3 and 4 is that so it kind of helps the director. So if anybody is wondering what levels they should direct, I've been told many times that doing 3 and 4 kind of makes it a little easier because the students really do take over. So, which is part of that poetic stage that's so important. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing the slideshow. Sometimes it's hard to get back into that without messing up the call. So that might be the last you see of it, but I'll figure it out later. But I'm just gonna share the catalog really quick. We want this. All right, this is from my Challenge B meeting earlier. So we want to get over to Challenge 2. If you have your own catalogs, it can kind of help, but I will kind of zoom in here on stuff. Now, something about the online catalog that is a nice little feature is sometimes if you're considering, okay, should I check out one of these parent resources or some of these things that seem a little interesting, like history of the arts, state of the arts, can I kind of get a gist of, I wish I could read that along with my students, but I'm too busy. But if you click on some of these, I'm not sure if State of the Arts has one. I'm going to look at that really quick for all of us. Nope, this one doesn't have an example. But if you go here to Amusing Ourselves to Death, if you scroll down, Lee Bortons has recorded these on YouTube. There's usually her and 3 other classical leaders that are discussing the book. And it's usually about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. But a lot of times it's given me the cliff notes of that book. and to see, okay, what is the gist of what they're really trying to get at? And now sometimes I'm good with that and it gives me everything I want, but sometimes this one in particular, I'm like, okay, I have to get that book and actually read deeper. This is a book I highly recommend. This is, I read this at my pastor's recommendation well before I got this. I think we had just started CC, and this book has been very impactful to us, just thinking about it. It starts talking about how Hebrew society and biblical, like the way God kind of designed society and human learning to work, is a word-based culture, which goes back to, Jesus is called the Word, and he's discussing what happens. Neil Postman is talking about what happens as we transition into an image-based society, which a lot of, the Canaanites were an image-based society, and the Egyptians were an image-based society. Even their writing was image-based. But so now Neil Postman is writing in the 1980s, but when you read it, it gave me chills. Now I read it well over 10 years ago now, but it is very prophetic, talking about what would happen to the way we communicate and the way we understand and the way we see things as our society changes. So if anybody has time to read that, this is a really, really good read. Excuse me. Once I start coughing, it's really hard to stop. Humility, a lot of people are familiar with. That's a really quick read. It is good. I do recommend it. But this Saving Leonardo, I'm not going to be able to stop now, I'm afraid. I get this little dry tickle and then I can't stop. Saving Leonardo, as she said, this was incredible. Now, this, my daughter started Challenge 2. Some of my son has medical issues it kind of can be very consuming in our life. So my daughter was entering Challenge 2, and I really, really wanted to be involved with her, with discussions, and I wanted to mentally be involved, even if I couldn't be right there hands-on with her education day to day. I had wanted to tutor her all the way up through Challenge 4, and I really had to just, I couldn't do that with everything else that was going on. We also ended up having another child, and it was just crazy. But somebody said, okay, why don't you try Saving Leonardo? And so I read that the summer before. I spent, the summer before her Challenge 2 year reading it. And I'll just tell you, it was wonderful going into this year, because it is a fusion of basically everything in the debate strand and then part of the reasoning and logic strand as well. And just reading this one book made it so I can engage on so many, and also the exposition strand. It made it so I can engage on so many different topics. There is, she shows art. I'm going to try to, let me share this part of my screen so you guys can see me a little closer. Okay, so there is some artwork in here. So she is talking about the dovetailing, as Stacy said, the dovetailing of philosophy and art and history, like all three of those things. So say for an example, she gives these two pieces of art from this massacre that happened. There's also another one of the same massacre that happened in Mexico. And she is saying, because of what you see, the way the artist drew these or painted these, tells you an awful lot about their worldview and their philosophy. She also goes in at the very beginning. She explains Francis Schaeffer's, it's called the fact value split, that comes into a lot of his writing, and it comes into Nancy Pearcey's writing a great deal as well. She also writes the book Total Truth, which is we recommend for some of the later levels. It's very good. But because it dovetails the philosophy and the history and all these things, if you had one resource to help you get ready, and if you have a lot of younger children, you're going to feel distracted, but you still want to be engaged, I would just really recommend this book as a summer read. And it's enjoyable, and there's lots of pictures, so it kind of coaxes you through. But she doesn't just do visual art. She also, as you can see on the cover, she goes into movies, she goes into music. She talks about what discordant music, what that says about the composer. So she's talking about all arts, like visual arts, theater, movies, etc., even what commercials are saying about philosophy. So just a plug for that. And then let me go back to the catalog really quick. And I think, Stacy, you kind of covered everything important, didn't you? Let me just go to the next page just to be sure there wasn't something else there. The words aptly spoken, most of you are probably familiar with these by now. If you're not, this is another really powerful way as parents to stay engaged when you can't be reading along with everything. It does help you have, like, there is content stuff, questions in there, but it also helps you have more like Socratic type discussions, like, what do you think about this? And like, if you're not gonna pull out your 5 common topics chart and try to create something from thin air, it kind of guides you through how to have discussions with your kids on these. So there is a lot of literature for these. Stacy, do you feel like the Copper Lodge is worth it on all of these, or some of them like okay just to go get a thrift store copy? Like you mentioned the epic poetry. I know we're eventually coming out with a Beowulf, but not yet. Are any of these like you felt like for the Copper Lodges that you could have done without and just done a thrift store copy?
This is the only one that the English epic poetry. That's the only one of the Copper Lodge that I got.
Okay.
All the other ones I did some other version, even with Beowulf, because there's a lot of different translations of Beowulf. It just enriched our conversations in class that we had 3 or 4 different versions, and it actually just added, we were able to compare. So I didn't mind it.
Okay, cool. And I guess, and now I'm thinking about in some of these, like I think Jane Eyre, and I think several of these, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, and Pilgrim's Progress, I think just came out. So maybe they weren't even in the catalog. So it'll be interesting to see what people say, if they're as valuable as having like the English poetry. So if anybody wants to contact me in a year and give me feedback on those, that would be lovely. So as far as that, that's basically it for the catalog. So like I said, Stacy kind of did all my work for me. And let me see what else we're supposed to be looking at here. We're going to jump over. I'm going to share my screen, and then we can do some final Q&A, and then I'll give you a coupon code and talk to you about a couple strategies for saving money. See, how about Latin? It says, will the blue grammar book be, you can't see the whole thing. Will the blue grammar book be the same?
Yeah, it's the same.
That stays for, yeah, we use that for every level. That's sort of like our reference guide for all Henley Latin. Let's see. Sorry, guys. I'm always slow changing screens. And we'll go to the slide version so it's big enough so people can see. Okay, so this is your discount code for the CC Bookstore. Everybody see that okay? And I can just read it out for anybody who's just dialed in on phone. It's CCL. That stands for classical. Sorry, that stands for Classical Christian Leaders. CCL Q1 2526. So CCL Q1 2526. So it's for Q1 25-26 year. So this is if you get one of this those parent resources, which we're now calling CCL books, if you have one of those in your cart and use that code, it'll give you $10 off. It does expire at the end of March. It's like if you wanted to throw Saving Leonardo in, or The Amusing Ourselves to Death, that kind of makes it a little less painful when you're checking out. Now, does everybody know that the new about linking your bookstore and your CC Connected accounts? Do you guys all know about the importance of that? Because what's going to happen is for coming the next year, all the bookstore prices are going to be going up because the prices are going up everywhere. Our printing costs are going up, everything. It's just the way it is. But what CC is doing is if you are registered in a community, you're going to have like they're going to give you an automatic like price lock on those, which amounts to about a 15% discount. So you have to make sure your CC Connected account and your bookstore is connected. When you go to the bookstore, there should be a pop-up that'll prompt you to do that. So you just need to go ahead and click, and it'll take you over to CC Connected, and then it'll dovetail those two. And additionally, you know how it was like $250, I think it was $250 you had to buy in order to get free shipping before. Well, they're making it so that if your accounts are linked and you're registered in a program in a community, you also get free shipping at $50 instead of $250. So that's that helps a lot, especially when sometimes we're trying to buy things piecemeal as we can afford it. The only thing is just what was the thing about? Yeah, like make sure the two things are linked. But we can't quite compete with Amazon because we don't have robots picking in the bookstore yet. Like, and I don't think we ever will. We hire CC families, we hire like challenge students, stuff like that, to pick your books for you. So can't do the overnight shipping, and we can't do the free shipping just yet for for everything. But that's what we're doing right now to try to lower costs. Additionally, there will be a Math Map sale coming in April. It's not going to last very long. It's not going to be like 3 weeks sale. It's going to be maybe only 4 days. So pay attention for when that discount comes, because Math Map is one of the more expensive things. If you have younger kids, like any of you guys who have Challenge A, Challenge B, or any of the foundations, if you're going to start in on that. So, so just keep an eye out for that. Aside from that, let me double check. Yeah, so there's February Frenzy events. Obviously, you guys know about Math Map at home events. For those of you who have younger families, will be March through May. We'll also do a few in the fall. And then, of course, everybody needs to register for practicum, because I'm going to be bringing all the books, and you can like look at these and see if you actually you can see the Copper Lodge, whether because the Copper Lodge books are they're often about $10-12 as opposed to a thrift store copy or an ex-library copy. So that way you can kind of touch and feel those things and see if it's worth spending the money on. And if you're not linked on the Instagram and Facebook pages that I have for your area of the state, it should be Northern and Eastern Kentucky CC for one half of the state, and Southern and Western for the other half of the state. I did not pick the names for these, so I apologize that they're so verbose. But if I do post sales and things like that on those pages on both Instagram and Facebook. So aside from that, there's my contact information if anybody wants to screenshot that. Most of you got a text from me. You can save that in your phone. If you have any questions, just text me. I'm happy to answer. I had somebody from my last call already texting me questions about catching up with Latin, things like that, for her students that haven't been able to do it. So I'm happy to answer questions. Text is usually best. I only check email probably twice a week. So does anybody else have any questions? Or aside from that, we'll probably just call it. It says, yeah, gray highlights are the required items. Yeah. So if you look in the catalog, Emily, sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the chat there. Thank you, Stacy. So usually what they're showing you, let me stop sharing that other screen. Well, no, we'll leave that up. Usually they show you the centerfold thing, and it has all the grayed out stuff. The grayed out stuff is the stuff they strongly recommend. I haven't found a whole lot of things that you really didn't need. It's really rare that there's not one of those things that you really have to have. Although, Emily, I did find something that they should have had in Challenge A, that lab notebook that Stacy was talking about. We should have had that for science fair. So I'm gonna have to talk to somebody, because that would have helped so much with doing the lab journal and everything that we had to do. So if anything, the grayed out things are necessary, plus a few things that I would recommend. So yeah, Modest Proposal is a free download. Yeah, that should be it. So if nobody else has any questions, I'll go ahead and I'm going to stop recording, and yeah, just reach out if you have any questions. And see, oh, my tech is getting funny.